In my next big section here, reacting to the Dune trailer, I want to talk about a couple of odds and ends I didn't get to in the earlier sections, starting with Duncan Idaho and Gurney Halleck. Duncan Idaho features very prominently in this trailer. This is great. It's great seeing Jason Momoa in it. At first, we were a little hesitant that, he's too big to play him, that the books describe Duncan Idaho as this super ninja, and they repeatedly say how cat-like and lithe he is, slinking around, and, Jason Momoa is a tank. But then, this is the same reaction other big channels like Quinn's Ideas had, that he said, looking at him in motion, he manages to convey that pretty well, that he's more speed than less I'm Aquaman, bare-chested and fighting off guys. He's a good actor. He managed to shift into that Duncan's more about speed. And the difference it makes when you shave your beard, I guess. But he managed to shift into that pretty well. And he's not just, he's celebrity hype. It's one of those things where there is celebrity hype around Jason Momoa, but it's earned. He really is this magnetic personality, great and fun to be with guy. And it can verge on self-parody at times. It's annoying when they go, hey, let's have a beer with Jason Momoa. He's a cool guy, like in some commercial or something. But he is that great. And it's a fine line I worry about, that it's not going to be just empty hype for Jason Momoa. He lives up to it. Like Aquaman wasn't just, hey, it's Khal Drogo playing Aquaman. He gave it his all and lived up to it and really presented it well. What I'm trying to say is I was worried at first this was stunt casting, but just seeing him in the first few images, we felt better, and seeing him now in the trailer with real dialogue, and it just the motion of that one that he walking up to Paul at the end and without saying anything else, dropping to his knee in front of him, saying, "My Lord Duke." And it's sorrowful, and just so much the implications of that. They both know what happened, and everything he's conveying with that. And yeah, it's that, he's got that cool guy bro charm of, hey, my man, here we go. But just seeing him go, my boy, Paul, he sells it well, that this is this soldier who really likes his commander's son, that Duncan Idaho is the best soldier in the Atreides army. He is this super ninja assassin. Well, he trained at the Swordmaster School of Jinaz. I'm mispronouncing that. So he is officially one of the best swordsmen in the galaxy. In the Q&A thing leading up to this, Colbert asked Momoa, who would win in a fight between Duncan Idaho and Khal Drogo? And he went, well, Duncan Idaho. And yeah, canonically, Duncan Idaho is almost superhuman he's a one-man army. That if the Imperial shock troops, the Sardaukar, they go, one of them is worth a dozen regular soldiers, Duncan is worth a dozen Sardaukar. He can fight a dozen Sardaukar and survive. There's 10 Sardaukar, he will fight and kill them. And he can do that. The point being that as the Atreides Swordmaster, he's their best fighter and part of their inner circle, just seeing that camaraderie he has with Paul and with everyone else. So I'm kind of worried about the whole celebrity culture stunt casting thing, but Momoa has avoided that with Aquaman. It wasn't just, hey, we cast Momoa, but, he gave the role its all. He really embodied it. I felt a lot better hearing him talking about Duncan in the behind-the-scenes video where he treated it as a real role that he was playing. And you expect them to show off a well-known actor in the trailer to get people interested in this. So I'm not even worried about that, though. They featured Duncan quite prominently in this compared to Gurney Halleck, who's in the trailer, but not as much, because, Momoa is popular. But, like what Quinn said, it's a lot. I get this wave of relief that they're actually going to do Duncan Idaho justice by displaying him prominently in this. He is prominent in the book, but, well, this is a trap that the miniseries fell into, that Duncan is reasonably prominent in the first book, but it's more how they describe him doing things off-screen. That, like, he killed a dozen Sardaukar off-screen. How the hell did he do that? Because it talks about scenes more than it shows them. Herbert doesn't do action scenes that much. So you get this sense of how cool Duncan is, but if you can see how people fall into this, if you're a movie or a TV show adapting it, you go, oh, well, he doesn't really do that much in the book overall in terms of its plot. Let's either cut him out, well, not cut him out, but cut him down to a minor role, which is short-sighted because in terms of the overall Dune book series, the 6 books Frank Herbert wrote, Duncan Idaho is a very prominent recurring character. This is a huge role, but he's more important in, like, books 2 and 3. So they'll just, the short-sightedness of even the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries did this, where Duncan Idaho barely appeared in the first miniseries, and then when he's really prominent in the sequel miniseries, Children of Dune, it was a bit awkward when they kind of had to reintroduce him. They had even shifted actors. They had recast him, and he was a much bigger role in Children of Dune. It was great seeing him in that. The actor did a good job. But still, that you're not planning out. It's that thing where you fall into where the first installment has minor characters who are important later, and you should take the time to set them up well. Otherwise, you won't get it. So overall, just, I'm not worried about, you worry about that whenever you see an actor in a big role of, oh, Jesus, is this going to turn into a vanity project? But I'm confident in Momoa and in the elements of how they're handling this. And I'm really happy because Duncan Idaho will finally get the proper setup he deserves. I hope they go and do the later books. Even if they don't, they don't really, even the miniseries didn't comprehend this, that he's important to Paul, even if he isn't on screen that much. That even if most of Duncan's scenes were things we saw in the trailer, they're important to Paul. This is a man he's known for years. So, like in the miniseries, they just have him go, hey, I'm Duncan Idaho. Whereas in the trailer, having Paul run up and be so happy to see him, he hasn't seen him in months because he's been setting up work on Arrakis where they've been moving themselves, that just the emotion in that one thing, seeing that he's a deep personal friend of Paul Atreides, I'm happy they have that in there, and I'm just gushing over it, that they're really going to portray this well. And, it's strange that everyone had to complain that, oh no, they cast a black person to play Liet Kynes when race is all mixed up in the future of Dune. It's 20,000 years in the future. No one mentions, they made Duncan Idaho a Hawaiian. Race isn't a thing in there. No one is like, contemporary races don't exist in the far future. They're all mixed up phenotypes and things. So he looks pretty good in this. I like they're putting in real emotional things too, not just fight scenes showing how badass he is, but like that thing of Paul being happy to be reunited with Paul, seeing each other, and later stricken with grief and saying, my Lord Duke, really treating this as a character. I'm very happy about that. Gurney Halleck wasn't really in the trailer that much. He was a bit more in the behind-the-scenes video they played right before they aired it with Josh Brolin. It was amazing, because Colbert had been talking about, I read the books as a child, I've just finished rereading it another time, and Josh Brolin, how would you describe Gurney Halleck? And he gave the perfect answer. He goes, how would you describe him? He goes, a musician. And knowing that what the joke he was making, Colbert went, oh, you get to play a balisette in this, and it's this whole thing in the books that Gurney Halleck is a poet-warrior in the classic sense. That he's the war master of the Atreides armies. He's like this general or colonel, because he leads from the front lines, fighting alongside his men. But he has this softer side where he reads poetry and composes poetry and plays a balisette, which is this stringed instrument. And we've seen shots of the props they're going to be using in this. We know that's going to be in there. But, he's had this hard life. He was a slave on the Harkonnen homeworld. They killed his family. And just, I really love the speech Brolin gave about how he's trying to embody Gurney Halleck, which wasn't in the trailer. Check out the Q&A if you haven't already. It's got a few more behind-the-scenes shots of him interacting with his men and talking about what Gurney's going to be doing. Gurney's going to be a major character for a while as well. And for those wondering who would win in a fight between Duncan Idaho and Gurney Halleck, my answer is Duncan Idaho would have a really tough fight, but ultimately win. But they serve different functions. That Duncan Idaho is this super ninja. He's a lone wolf you send in the enemy base to personally kill 100 men. Gurney Halleck is a soldier and a commander. That Gurney Halleck is the guy you send in at the head of a regiment of 100 men charging with swords drawn, and he leads them and maneuvers them on the battlefield to kill 1,000 men. That he's a field commander, and he deals with groups of soldiers in a war zone, whereas Duncan Idaho's this lone wolf you send to do a mission. And they're not superior to the other. They're different functions. Each is very valuable, and they respect each other a lot. So it just, Team Atreides feels like such a family, that they're all so loyal to each other, and with Paul, and how they managed to convey that in a relatively limited number of chapters at the beginning of the book. It's amazing. So that's my thoughts on how they're doing with Duncan Idaho. I'm feeling great about this. That if you felt like, oh, they're overusing Duncan Idaho in this a bit because it's Jason Momoa, well, Duncan Idaho is criminally underserved in other adaptation attempts, so I'm happy they're beefing him up now. And Gurney Halleck is doing stuff. We saw a lot of him in those shots of the, I think he's going to be prominent in the Spice Harvester scene. We've seen shots of him with Paul leaning out the door of the helicopter, so that'll be in there too. A few odds and ends that didn't fit into the other sections. Just random thoughts on the trailer. This is silly. I love this shot they have of the flying vehicles, they're not ornithopters, whizzing past the camera, that the camera is pointed to the right, the hover cars are flying to the left, and the camera pans to follow them. And I think that's a reused shot from Blade Runner 2049. I think this director just likes that shot. And it's a good shot. It's just his visual signature is following a hover car as it zips by like that. That was fun. We saw a shot of burning palm trees, and I just instantly went, oh, it's that scene. And Quinn saw this too in his video, but I saw it after that Dune is a desert planet, and it's so bone dry that you don't cry. You're worried about wasting water. What is the ultimate expression of wealth is decorative plants. That the governing palace of Arrakis has this row of palm trees in front of it. And a character at one point in an early chapter remarks, the locals kind of resent that they look at a tree and what do they see? There go 20 of us, that there's like enough water, the amount of water it takes to sustain one of those decorative palm trees is enough to keep 20 people alive. And the symbolism of that the Harkonnens don't care that something that is that precious as a plant like that, they are burning everything. The visual shorthand of that, and I hope they stress that in the movie, there aren't trees here, it's an eternal desert, and it's really expensive to have one or two here, and they're burning it all. So that's when I saw that shot in the trailer, I went, oh, there go 20 of us. I remembered it from the book. A couple of other shots in here. There's this weird shot of Jessica wringing her hands as she walks down a corridor. I'm not sure what that's from. It's not from when she chose Paul to the Reverend Mother. That was a different costume she was wearing at the time. I'm not sure what she's doing here. Maybe it's when she meets Mapes. That might be different. Also, they have this thing where they show, again, it reminds me of Hunger Games, where in Hunger Games they had this unique salute, because it's the future. We developed a different salute. That they show Duncan Idaho doing this salute where he taps his knife to his heart and then holds it up parallel to his head, and then Paul does the same thing. Which is fine, it's just a little detail. Well, that's what our salute is like. But I will say, I wonder if they're going to show Atreides' battle language, which would incorporate hand signs in it. That in the books, they mention just in passing, that they don't describe it, that, well, every army has its own internal code language of short, to the point, sometimes with hand signs, things you say, like a special ops team in a black ops mission would be saying to each other as they're sneaking around really fast. And I do love how the miniseries, well, actually it was in the books, but the Children of Dune miniseries portrayed it very well, that there's this scene where two Bene Gesserit are talking to each other, and they're saying innocuous things verbally, while using sign language with their hands, they're saying, you have to kill him. Now is the time to strike, while saying innocuous things verbally because they know they're being listened to by other people. All the secrecy and double talk of that I wonder if we'll see some sort of Atreides battle language in terms of their hand signs and things. We do know that they hired David J. Peterson, the staff linguist from Game of Thrones, to develop the languages in Dune. Like, they mention in passing that they're not really speaking English, they're speaking Gallic, which is what the 20,000 years removed future version of English mixed with Slavic languages. And at one point, Herbert acknowledged they're not really speaking English, it's thousands of years from now. But they hired Peterson to develop the Fremen internal language, Chekhovsa, which they know how to speak everyone else's language, but they have their own internal language for when they're dealing with battle instructions and things. But we haven't heard any of that yet. I look forward to the featurette on we developed a language for the Fremen. But you wonder, like, he's a linguist. Did he develop like a code language for the Atreides as well? I'm not sure. Bloody handprint on Duke Leto's shoulder. I think we're all pretty sure this is the scene where Mapes dies. I'd be surprised if it's not. I'm worried that I'm overthinking this, that with Dr. Yui, that they cast an Asian man to play a traitor. Because that whole yellow peril thing, Japanese internment camps of, the Asian traitors among us, I really think I am leaping 2 steps ahead of that. Because Yui is actually a tragic character. They blackmail him, they get his wife. And there's not much he can do. But I worry that if the only Asian guy in the entire thing will be portrayed as a villain, the answer to that is I hope they cast other Asian people in this, in other roles. Like, imagine if the only black characters in this were the Harkonnens, and the really evil guy. And when we said diversity, we didn't want you to cast them as nothing but villains, guys. So, as a mix of things. So I hope they get that right in there, and how they play Yui, because he's not even been among the main cast members that much. And even the miniseries managed to portray him as this tragic character in the books, and I hope they don't short that and give the wrong impression.